So this is the standard image in the simulator without the shutters in place. Now I can see through the camera viewer a slightly brighter stripe in the middle, and again the camera exaggerates the brightness difference, the contrast difference between different areas of the screen. I think because of the way that the white balance works. What I see with my eyes is considerably smoother and more even, although I can see a couple of slightly bright fringes where the edge of the blend zone is. Now you can play about with the settings and get a slightly better result, but also, to be brutally honest, you very rarely have this kind of sky when you're flying. You tend to have clouds and other things which will not show the same kind of fringing, so you can kind of take your eyes off it. It doesn't really have to bother you that much. None of it gets rid of the overall overlap, and whilst the overlap is fine during the day, it's not so fine when you want to fly in the dark, and that's the whole problem that we're setting out to solve here. Okay, so this is a typical nighttime scene. Same airport, same position. I've just turned the time forward to be in the middle of the night. Basically this happens because the ambient light from the projector overlaps in that area and it doubles up. So where you have black on a projector image, you don't have no light. I've got an LCD projector which is transmissive, so there's a light behind an LCD panel shining through it, and where we're expected to have a dark or a black pixel, then the LCD panel will have all of its pixel elements turned on in such a way that it blocks as much of the light through that pixel as possible, and that pixel then shows up as dark. But unfortunately, the light being as bright as it is, and as bright as it has to be in order to project, and LCD panels by their nature just not being capable of blocking all of the light that comes through them, you do get some light bleed. So this is what we call the black offset, which is the basic amount of light the projector is going to cast on the screen, even if it's displaying nothing at all, even if it's displaying just a black screen. But there are ways to solve this problem, and ultimately that's what this video is all about. How do you solve this problem? Well, the first way to solve it is the software way, which is that you put some kind of software alongside your warping and blending, or hopefully this will be a feature of the warping and blending software, though it certainly isn't of Immersive Display Pro or any of the consumer level packages that I know about, is that you could basically draw a sector on the screen, draw an outline of the area of the screen not doubled up, so the area that's not overlapped, or you could probably draw the overlap area and then flip it, whatever. Either way, you'd mark out those areas of the screen that aren't overlapped, and then you would increase the base value, the amount of luminance on the screen, to try and make the rest of the screen the same brightness as the strip in the middle. So of course that would make the whole thing brighter, and it would make the whole night experience much worse, because you know, the degree I'm seeing it with my eyes, if the whole of the screen looked like that, it would look very washed out indeed. And I think I'll find that a fairly suboptimal experience, but that is one way of doing it. And to be honest, I had stopped flying at night really because of this problem, because it was so distracting and so difficult. And I didn't fly anything later than sort of dusk, when I might start to notice a slight fringing, but I wouldn't see the problem anywhere near as badly as it is right now. And then I, as I periodically do, I sort of Googled for solutions, and I came across a blog post at the Fly Elise website, actually. Fly Elise, who make Immersive Display Pro and Immersive Calibration Pro, had a blog post on this particular issue. And there's very little information on the internet about it, so it was great that they did. And their suggestion was to use physical shutters. Now, by that I mean literally something that gets in the way of the light beam. And the idea is you leave the projector images overlap, so the software works the way that it should, but you simply block off that portion of the image on each projector on either side of the blend zone that is blended together. And so you don't get the light overlap at all, or you get very little of it, because that part of the image has actually been blocked off. And that means that you get the same effect as if you had butted the two images up together, but you don't actually have the issues with positioning that you would have if you tried to do it in the real world. And it seemed like an optimal solution, so I asked myself, how could I do this? They suggest using, they say you can experiment with bits of paper and card, but ultimately they suggest making shutters out of metal or plastic and actually permanently mounting them somehow. That was further than I wanted to go at this point. I wanted to experiment with this, and so I thought, well, let's start out with some bits of paper. So I tried some bits of paper, and it proved the concept, I guess, but the paper didn't block all the light. And so I looked for a slightly better material, and that is when I found what I'm about to show you now. Okay, so here's the secret. This is the material that I used to make the shutters. And I started out with paper, and I layered a few sheets of paper together, and it did successfully keep the light out, but it was quite thick and it caused quite a lot of fringing. I tried wood with similar effects, and in the end I settled for this. Now, what is this, you may ask yourself? Well, this is a barbecue mat. Literally, it's it's a mat that you can put down on top of your barbecue and then put food on top of it to cook. So bizarre as it looks like it's plastic and it would melt, but it's not. It's actually, from what I can tell, made of some kind of carbon fiber, and as a result it resists heat pretty well. I figured that since it resists heat and it's black and doesn't transmit light, it might be a good material to try, so I did. So let me just fold this up and get this out of the way. So here is a prototype for one of the shutters, and that is it. It's literally just a strip of this stuff. I tried to make sure that I had one edge which was an edge from the original, so not a cut edge, because the original edges, as I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit, the original edges are a little bit straighter and a little bit just a little bit squarer, and that's it, two of those. And then some blue tack. There's the blue tack. And that's it, really. So I'll show you it mounted up on the front of the projector now, and literally all I've done is I've stuck it on the front of the projector using the blue tack. I made sure it was big enough to cover the whole lens, the length of the lens, and still be able to be stuck around the side of it. And as long as it's not actually touching the lens, you're fine. So if you have material similar to this, you could try it out. I mean, you could try other things. You could try card and wood. As I say, anything which is thick seems to cause light fringing problems for me. So even this causes light fringing. It's impossible to avoid fringing on an edge, but a very thin edge seems to cause less fringing than a thick edge. And so in the end I settled for just this, stuck on the front of the projector with blue tack. That's the secret, folks. That's all you got to do. Okay, so this is what the solution looks like. It's actually very simple. It's just a piece of black material, blue tacked, on the front of the projector in such a position that it cuts off the light from a small part of the projected image, and that is repeated on both sides. So I have a similar strip on the other projector, and that causes the effect that we'll have a look at now. Starting on the left hand side, if I take the strip and I move it, and sorry, you can see some shadowing from my hand, so kind of ignore that as best you can. But you can see the edge of the strip is now coming onto the screen. Right? And if I just blue tack those in place for a minute, so that's not actually too bad. The likely issue with that is that I've gone quite a long way, and if the two strips overlap to any degree, if the light overlaps to any degree, then you're going to lose pixels in the center because neither projector will actually be displaying them. So let's try fitting the other side and see how that does. Alright, sorry I knocked the camera there, or the camera position's moved slightly. And now what I need to do is fit the strip on the other side. So again, you're going to see some shadows from my fingers. But here's the strip being introduced. Now there, they're crossing over. Here, they're not. So how about we just put the bottom there. Top needs to come across just a tiny little bit. Blue tack that in place. Okay, so that's gone a little bit too far. I'm just going to remove the top edge and blue tack that there. Okay, now you can see that bright stripe down the middle. That bright stripe is down to fringing. So the actual edge of the strip, if I put my finger there, the actual edge of the strip is there. You can see. But there is some fringing at the edge of it. So I don't know if that's actually too close. So we need to get an image up on the screen and see if it's contiguous. So if I bring up Immersive Display Pro, and I go into configure, you can see I've actually set a background image from the simulator that walks together. And you can see a couple of things. Well, first thing you can see is that projectors are not properly aligned. So I need to fix that. That's to do with physical lens drift, which is something you can't 100% avoid, but you can tweak your projectors until they're in about the right position. I used to be able to make a sort of pixel by pixel adjustment within Immersive Calibration Pro. You can't do that anymore. So what you can see there is that you have a slightly dark stripe down the middle, and I think that's probably to do with the overlapping fringe. So there's no easy way to know how good or bad that would be except by firing up the simulator, but you can tweak the blending in order to try and help that a little bit. So first thing I'll do, let's change the mode on the projector. So let's go back to picture setup. These are my user settings. If I go to bright, now you can see there's a slightly bright stripe down the middle with a with a dark line to the side of it. The dark line is likely to be an area where the fringing is overlapping to the point where it's causing some diminishing of the light from both projectors. So that's probably not good. Let's go to cinema, which usually shows it up. Yeah, that's quite bad. We'll stick with game bright for now. And we'll just get rid of the menu. Alright, so I'm just going to adjust the strip on the left-hand projector very slightly. So I'll move the bottom first, and then I'll move the top to match. And that looks a little bit better, I think, although again the projector's moved during that operation. Just put that back. So we've got a bright area in the middle. I may have left too much of a strip in the middle. So let's find out. There's an easy way to find out, and that's just to get rid of these. Yeah. So yeah, the strip in the middle is pretty bright and pretty wide. So that's not going to provide me with the level of black offset compensation that I want. So again, I'm just going to move the strip a little bit to there. And that's a bit better. That looks a bit better. Let's go back into the configure view. I'm pretty sure the projector, yes, there you go. Projectors have moved again. Just because there's a little bit of play in the mount, which I've left in deliberately so I can move them. And yeah, that's not too bad. The bright strip is there, but it's tolerable. Now, this is on the default blend. You can improve that situation. So let's load one I prepared earlier. So I'm going to load the profile with the shutters. Get back into configure. So you can see there's a bright stripe down the middle. It's not quite as bad. And there are various things that you could do to try and improve that. Basically it's a combination of that and moving the physical strips around. So if we look at the blending properties for the left there, you can see I've adjusted the curve quite a bit. And that was the setting that I found worked the best for me when I initially set this up. Now I have moved the shutter since then, so maybe it needs a little bit of tweaking, but I'm actually going to just move the shutters a tiny bit again. There we go. Projector back in place. And that's largely got rid of the black fringing. Not completely, but largely. And we can probably improve that situation a little bit. So for example, okay, so here we are back in the same scene. Now that bright stripe in the middle looks very objectionable on the camera. Doesn't look anywhere near as bad to the eye. What I am noticing though is that shadowy area at the bottom, just on the left of the middle, and that's caused by the fact that the projector image comes up, or the left-hand projector comes up above the bottom of the screen, but of course the shutter is just straight all the way up and down. So there's a couple of ways that we can improve that, and the easiest is just to move the bottom of the shutter very slightly and put it on a very slight angle, which doesn't really matter in terms of the overall effect. So let's try that. And again, I've got the same problem with physically aligning the projectors. That's always pretty tedious, but no way we can avoid that. So now, instead of the dark area, I've basically got a slight area of brightness, and you can see that the bright strip is basically not straight up and down. It's kind of straight down to a certain point, and then it curves a bit. But remember that when I fly, I have the virtual cockpit on my screen, and so that area at the bottom is almost certainly going to be covered by an instrument panel, something that's dark, and on a dark background, you're going to see that an awful lot less. So that's not too bad. That's livable. But the real question is, what does it now look like when we have a night scene? And that's what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so this is the final result, and you can see that the black level is pretty much uniform across the screen. Now the room is not completely dark, it's daylight, and there is some light coming in through the window. Although I have a blackout curtain up in front of the window, it doesn't completely cover the whole window, and it doesn't stop some light getting into the room. So the screen can get a bit darker than this. And finally, I just wanted to show you the results that I've got after playing about with the blending a little bit more. I've actually got an asymmetric blend here, so the blending values are slightly different on the left than on the right. You can still see a slight bright stripe off to the left of the centre of the image there. However, with my eyes, I really can't see it. So this is actually really well blended. It's well enough blended that it's perfectly acceptable. And let's just try this same scene at night and see if we still have the same kind of decent black offset coverage that we had before. And there you have it. So there is still a bright area in the middle. It's with the blend that I've now I've tweaked, it is a little bit wider than I would like, but that is the price that you pay to get rid of the bright stripe on the lighter scenes, which is where I'm going to do most of my flying. And to be honest, this is nowhere near as distracting. It doesn't have it has gradual edges. It almost looks like a moonbeam or some light bloom or something like that. Whereas before it was very, very obvious because it was wide and it had sharp edges, and you could see exactly what it was. Anyway, I hope that was useful to you, and I'll see you back on the channel very soon.